So when we, tried to move out of making all the flip flops by hand because it just got to be really difficult for me to make any profit doing that because it was wearing me out. It was literally wearing my hands out. It's really hard work making on those shoes. So at the time, this was, I don't know what year this was, but I couldn't really find anywhere to make flip flops except in China. At the time, I didn't really even know that making flip flops in Mexico was an option, so I sourced some factories in China, and I hated that process. I was dealing with, I was so disconnected from the people I was working with, I just couldn't stand it, and the people that I did get to know, all they wanted to do was tell me about how horrible the work conditions and the living environments were in China, which I already knew that going into it. But I was feeling really desperate to keep my business alive, so I made this stuff in China, and I placed one order in China. It was about I think it was 1,000 flip flops. It cost me like $13,000 to get them over here. They get into Miami in customs, and this is a crazy story. Somehow someone had hacked into the customs account and tried to scam me for $4,000 to import my flip flops. So they got held up in customs forever, and I finally get them. The boxes are busted open. I'm missing half of my men's 11, which is my most important size. So the whole process of dealing with China was just terrible, and so that's why I'm so against manufacturing in China and people that do manufacture in China. I understand there's some products that you really don't have an option to make it anywhere but China, but for me, I will never produce anything in China again. I'm standing here saying that, probably wearing a shirt made in China or some pants made in China, but it's just the world we live in. So after dealing with China, I was really kind of about over the whole idea of Cooks, and I was really depressed with it. I was broke, so I moved back home, was living in my parents' house, and started trying to source flip-flops made in America, and I found one guy out in Pennsylvania that could make them, but he wanted $40 a pair. I didn't want to invest the money in building a factory out here in South Carolina. And someone suggested that I look into manufacturing in Mexico. So I started looking all over Mexico. I met a guy on the internet that had very few what's the word I'm looking for? He just hadn't worked with a lot of people. So I didn't really know how this was going to go. So I flew to Mexico and met this guy. And he basically toured me around Mexico for a month, introducing me to factories. And I was blown away with how well that went. I mean, I met tons of people down there that could make my flip-flops. They could make these bags that I've been making. And so things were looking really good down there. And I finally got set up with a factory. And the guy I got set up with, he had his own brand. And I found that if someone has their own brand, you probably don't want to work with them. Because he really screwed me on my first order of flip-flops. Cost me a ton of money. I ordered about 1,000 flip-flops from this guy, and he mixed all my lasts up. So I get all these flip-flops that have the strap of, say, a men's 11, but it's on a men's 8-foot bed. And there were some women's 7s that were good, and a couple of men's pairs, but it was a total disaster. And some of those pairs actually that were good are still out there, and they were great, but the majority of the order was screwed up. So that was like fail number 2 with big time manufacturing. So I barely, recover from that order. Meanwhile, I'm finding people down in Mexico. They're making my bags. Start bringing the bags in from Mexico. The bags are doing really good. And it's almost a year and a half later that I finally get set up in another factory with a guy that could really make a quality flip-flop. And that was all he did. He's still making them. He doesn't have his own brand. And that's the flip-flop, you're seeing today that's on our website. And when I placed my first order with this certain factory, I based all my order SKUs off what I've been selling at farmers markets, which when I went to selling online was totally different. You know, when I was selling at market, I was selling primarily women's shoes. And I was selling a lot of small men's shoes. When I went online, all sales switched to men and pretty much size 9, 10, 11. Very few 12s. I was also selling a lot of 12s at market. And unfortunately, I placed an order with the factory. Then I had a very large company come to me and they wanted a private label flip-flop or a personally branded flip-flop for their company. And I just received my first order. I get this order. I've got a minimum order quantity at the factory I got to hit. So I'm not going to say no to making these people's flip-flops. You know, I get their cash, order their flip-flops, and then I got to stack another order on top of their order to hit my minimum order quantity. And I did that. And I did it again on the same SKUs that I'd gotten from the farmers markets. So I get all these flip-flops in, and they did great, but unfortunately, I ordered way too many women's flip-flops and not nearly enough men's size 10 and 11. And so I know a lot of y'all right now are going to our website and you're like, you're sold out of these flip-flops. And point is, I'm sitting on a lot of flip-flops that I couldn't get my cash out of, so it's just really slowed down production for us. And that's where we're at right now. But now we're getting back into production. We've changed a lot of things around. We're printing on our own canvas as opposed to using some pre-printed canvases. We're printing our own stuff. It's saving us money and it's getting us a lot more custom product. We've been tanning leather, but now we're tanning like an even more specific leather for a flip-flop that is it is not tanned with any oil. It's like oil-free tanning, and it's got this awesome texture when it gets wet. I had to hire a new guy to kind of run my operations on the ground because the last guy I had, he just couldn't keep up, and I don't know what happened to him, honestly. But, you know, we're just kind of like really restructured things to make life a lot easier, you know, for me to get y'all what it is you really want. And at a price that, you know, people can be happy with. So, you know, our goal with the business right now is to just grow until I can't stand personally do the fulfillment anymore.